forces of nature, Mr. Beale.
When you've watched as many movies as me, the scripts, the storylines, they kind of all seem to run together. So, kind of wanted to talk to you guys just a little bit about the pattern I'm noticing, or I've come to realize, I should say, that America isn't what we all have in our heads. A lot of people, we can't help but think, our parents, how things were so much easier and different in different respects in their time, and how everything's kind of gotten away from us. And this isn't some kind of conspiratorial rant or whatever, but you ever notice how America doesn't even feel like it's the same government anymore? And I don't stop it right there. Not Trump, not Biden. I'm talking like we're going back to like Reagan and the 70s pretty much. So yeah, that's kind of where we're at, or where I'm at least, because I'm not talking about a country that's arguing about, our values or, its long-term vision, but how our country is managed like a brand.
You get up and howl about America and democracy. There is no America. There is no democracy. We no longer live in a world of nations and ideologies. The world is a college of corporations, inexorably determined by the immutable bylaws of business.
Right? The optics, the quarterly results, damage control whenever a bad headline, a bad vibe, a bad story gets out there. And that kind of just makes me think about, the wildest part is, like I said, this didn't just happen with Trump. It didn't happen with Biden. It's been happening for the last 50, 60 years. And this didn't require all of these secret entities to just show up in some sort of meeting in a dark room underground, right? Because, like all changes in life, it happens slowly, right? And it happens through different ways. First way, of course, is incentives. This country loves to pay its way out of its problems, be it rebates, uh, deductions, depreciating assets, and also through policy, which kind of goes hand in hand sometimes. But through all of that, through what we decided to reward. And I mean, that's just what I was thinking about. I was playing around on Sora last night. I had this funny idea of, it came out pretty bad, like most Sora prompts do at the beginning, but I was trying to put a lot of the founding fathers as well as some of our more recent presidents, and they're all playing poker and they're all cheating, right?
The pot is rich. Let's see your medal.
Meticulous as a ledger, sir, and I intend to balance it in my favor.
A honest game is its own reward, they tell me. But a little draft from the sleeve never hurt history.
I am not a crook, but I do enjoy favorable odds.
I thought that was a pretty good idea, to just get everyone in a room and say, hey, it's all the same principle, it's all the same idea, right? America was founded on this idea that, the government exists for the people, by the people, right? The elected officials represent the citizens and not the shareholders. Although I would disagree, because we've seen a lot of midterm redistricting in frankly places that, in times that we don't do this. And it kind of rings the alarm bells, because it just is gerrymandering at the end of the day, where the elected officials are now choosing the voters and who gets their vote represented more. And somewhere along the way, that whole relationship flips, that, this was for the people, by the people. And it really came in different phases, but one of the biggest turning points was this whole mindset shift in how we thought about markets, right? Corporations, and even the government itself. Because, I mean, everyone is afraid of the government telling them what to do, how to live their life. And yet, Ronald Reagan, who was, some say, let the door open for corporations to walk through. And he wasn't the only one. After he opened the door, everyone else walked right through that same door, both Democrats and Republicans. And this isn't, shaming. This isn't me getting on a soapbox. This is just me kind of, I like to talk about ideas that I feel have actual intrinsic value. And when we're able to think and expand our minds versus being sheep, being told what to think, what to believe. And that's on both sides of the Democrat as well as the Republicans and even the MAGA, how they love to split views and, just they love to be like Pearl, from that debate with Anna Kasparian and just drop random, statements. Well, what about Biden? And it's like, well, we're not talking about that. Can you respond to the actual question and can you actually cite your information? Oh, I read it somewhere online, and it's like, okay, but let's go back in time. Let's look at it through the lens of the 1970s, and then when it actually accelerated even further into the 80s, right? Because that's really when we decided that the government was the problem and not the referee, right? I believe it was Ronald Reagan whose famous words are, "The scariest thing the American people is I am from the government and I am here to help you." Yeah, and from there, we really decided that government was the problem, right? And not the solution. And that we should let, the free markets figure themselves out because they're smarter, they're faster, and they're often more efficient. So what happened? Well, that whole story of deregulation started, and pretty much any time we talk about deregulation, people seem to think it helps businesses, but I have more memories of deregulation hurting. It's the economy, the people. Well, what are we talking about? Let's first one that comes off my head, just off the top, Enron. We deregulated energy and we destroyed so many people's lives, and everybody paid the price. So once deregulation happened, everything kind of got privatized. You told all these corporations, hey, grow as big as you want, consolidate as much as you want, optimize every single thing that you want, and it makes it better for you. And what we told the government was, hey, we want you to cut costs and we want you to stay out of the way, right? We want you to run lean because that's when things first quietly started to change. Because corporations stopped being tools inside of our own system. And the system started to reshape itself in the eyes of, corporations in that respect. Because regulations were loosened, antitrust enforcements got weakened, unions lost a lot of their teeth, and at that very same time, all of our taxes on capital fell. But at the same time, wages stopped keeping up with productivity. So if you owned certain things like tangible assets, like stocks, precious metals, companies, you were doing great, right? Everything was Gucci. And if you worked for a living, like most of us do, you were simply told the same thing. Well, you were just told to be patient and do the right thing, go to school, do the hard work, and that everything else will fall into place. But here's the crucial part that a lot of people missed. And no one needed to conspire on this, right? Because the incentives were enough. And once the corporations got inside of media, and because before you had one person who would tell you the story and they would lay out both the pros and the cons. And they would say, I leave it to you people. You decide with this information what you want. But of course, everything ended up being segmented and siloed off into different echo chambers, your CNNs, your MSNBCs, your Newsmax, your Fox. And yeah, media learned really that this outrage gets way more clicks than actually explaining things to people, right? Because platforms also learned that anger keeps us scrolling longer than understanding. I've talked about this in other videos about how the formula of social media is to keep us angry, to keep us engaged, to stay on the platform, and also the most important thing is to just fill our world with noise so we can't see the trees from the forest, right? And politicians also learn from that fundraising matters more than consensus. If you know anything about the schedule of a politician, they work, 4 or 5 months out of the year, and the rest of the time they are begging like a bunch of little broke bitches on their phone to their corporations, donors, telling them what they want to hear, which is what the government official will do for them. Because you and I are no longer the stakeholder in this country. And if you don't believe me, just look at the stock market and look at this chart right here that shows that how if 80 to 90% of people were unified on one issue that they wanted the government to move forward with, that the 10% wealthy individuals and corporation have more than enough sway to have the politicians do what they want and not what the people want. And that's the truth. Corporations learned that, their huge scale beats accountability, because just look at the debt. Everything gets kicked down another 3 months, another 6 months. Nothing really gets solved. It's just a lot of hand wringing and talking about, well, you did this and Biden did this and Trump did that and Obama did that and Clinton did that. And pretty soon you don't even remember where we started from. We're just caught in the most recent cycle of anger. And that's kind of, what happens. So what did the government start doing is what I asked myself. And the government really started thinking like a business. And that was that, short-term wins over long-term stability. And that's just every term is just all about raising donations and getting myself ready for my next reelection, because all these people care about in power are staying in power, keeping their power, and consolidating their wealth. As I'm sure you've noticed more and more now, hopefully you're waking up to the fact that just like a lot of the other financial breaking points in other societies, that the wealth is being concentrated towards the top and the bottom majority is taking on more debt, right? You don't believe me? I'm sure you have some credit card debt. I have credit card debt. So I can, say I'm just as guilty of this. Like I said, short-term wins took over long-term stabilities. The outcomes were really didn't matter anymore, because all that really mattered was the optics. As long as I get that nice sound bite, and make people understand my point of view and get them angry, maybe I'll even get you with a gotcha question, right? That's when it really started to change. And cost cutting over the public good. Really, what we're lacking in this country is empathy and understanding. We just simply want to point our anger at someone else and say, you're the reason that this is going bad. You're the reason I can't get a house. And that's not always the case, right? Because public service became a product. And we as the, everyday citizens, we became the users. And policies became performance metrics. Just enough to make us think, oh wow, they did something good. Because when money became the central point to winning elections, all of the policy naturally started listening to the people with the most money. Citizens United, which basically says a corporation is a person just like you or me, but they have untold amounts of wealth and they can spend it however they want. And a lot of the times it's not for our best interest. It's for the company's best interest. And that's how you end up with a system that technically holds elections, but it's functionally responding to capital inflow. Because that's the only thing. Who was your donors? Who do you have to appease? Because that's who puts you in power. And that's how this country got to where everyone is just simply arguing about everything. And I do mean everything, from culture, identity, outrage, just frustrations. It's all being pointed at you and me, as opposed to us actually saying, wow, it's the system that is robbing us from within. It is the system that is picking our pockets. And what are our taxes even going towards? We don't even get a say in where the taxes go or what they get spent on, right? It's just ones and zeros at this point, because it's all fiat currency. What is the dollar even based on? Good vibes that this country is going to honor its word. Just look up how many treaties, from Native Americans all the way to now, and all the policies, treaties we've stepped away from, we null and voided, we went against what our word was. And our word is what matters in this world, if you ask me, because without your word, it's just, no, trust me, bro, just trust me. I got this. I got your best interest. Just trust me. So let's just talk about what everyone else is talking about. Housing is getting more and more unaffordable. For instance, California, you have to have like $700,000 to get a shithole 2 to 3 bedroom place that needs a lot of work, right? And I'll show you these pictures of these new homes they built up the street from me that are literally $950 to $1 million, and they look like those communities where they're just alleyways, and they're just one house, one house, one house, one house, and it's just ridiculous how unaffordable everything is just getting. From healthcare, every year that goes up the costs with your premiums, with the plans, with the changing of policies, and at the same time, debt is quietly piling up, just like it did in Roman times, in the 1929s, in the 2000s. These were all the same phases that societies went through, because those types of fights are really loud and the transfer of power is really quiet. That's what I've noticed in my life, because again, how many times have we seen these big corporations say, hey, just trust me, and don't worry about it being a monopoly. All you need to worry about is if the price goes up. Add on to the fact that now everything is turning into a subscription. So when people say America feels like a corporation now, they're not saying that democracy disappeared. That's not what they're saying. What people are saying is that the logic has changed. Okay, we didn't abolish government. We merely optimized it, right? Because optimization doesn't ask, is this fair? It simply asks, how does this perform? And that's the real trick that we don't see, that's being played in front of us, okay? And it's not that you were lied to, but you were told to simply keep busy. Just stay busy arguing, stay busy scrolling, stay busy reacting to your lefty, loony friends and your crazy MAGA rights people, right? Because a distracted population is exactly what they want. The last thing they want is free thinkers, okay? They want people to run the machines, okay? That's as smart as you need to be. They don't want you to be smart enough to ask why or how. That's the last thing that this country wants. Because when you're distracted, you're a population that doesn't get organized, and an unorganized population can't push back because we're so just locked in each other, fighting like blind moles. So, no, America isn't owned by some shadow villain, okay? It's owned by incentives. It's owned by incentives we stopped questioning, because the system, we forgot, was supposed to actually serve the people and not the profits. And the moment that we start seeing this is the moment that we can start waking up and realizing that the noise starts to sound exactly like what it is, which is simply a very effective distraction for you not to notice what's actually happening.